Chapter 1 Wedding. All of her warm, salty tears would have easily filled the antique, crystal flutes meant for bubbling with California's best, chilled champagne. The guest list at Rachel's wedding was packed with old money and Fortune 500 heirs and heiresses, and their wealthy parents seeking business alignments to build wealth for their families and their offspring. They would celebrate her arranged wedding with endless toasts of their champagne, not her tears. They would spend the entire social affair strategically mixing and mingling, seeking the same types of financially successful unions for their sons and daughters. Love was never a consideration. It was always about increasing wealth with a business deal marriage to last forever. For anyone else, it would have been one of the best days of her life. For her, it was just another expectation that she was expected to accept and fulfill without complaint or question. It was the continuation of a role she had to play. She sat on her enormous bed in her room in her father's luxurious seaside mansion for the last time. She took out her journal and began to write her heart out. If the pages had mouths, they would be screaming her anger, lamenting her sadness, uttering her prayer for a different outcome, and crying out with her plea for strength and guidance. With each touch of her pen to her page, she sought solace. It has been quite a while since my mother passed when I was 19. Since then I have fallen in and out of love and chased my dreams for the life I wanted. This is not it. She shut the book and locked it. She had found new strength with each word. She dried her tears and packed her bag. If she went through with this wedding, she would be trading one jailer for another. This would come first with her domineering father and then, to replace him, with Kurt, a cold, rude, possessive groom who was ready to enter their new marriage with several mistresses already. She had met Kurt 3 times before she became engaged to be his wife. First, he was in attendance at her father's annual winter ball, a high society affair that she was expected to host in her mother's absence. On that initial meeting, he was aloof and seemed to busy himself with making political alliances and standing with the old boys network her father was part of. Though she had tried to engage him in conversation, he was more focused on drinking whiskey, smoking cigars, and ogling the scantily clad women that circled the ballroom. At their second meeting, he was invited to a state dinner at the White House and asked her to be his escort. He took her to Washington, D.C. on his private jet, and hardly uttered 10 words the entire flight from California. What could have been an opportunity to get to know him better, transformed into a reason to dislike him even more. She felt like she was to be at his service the entire time, the glittering accessory demonstrating how profoundly rich and politically connected he was. Rachel managed to enjoy the actual event as much as she could, grateful that they would not be spending the night, lest he got any ideas about what her companionship included. She was not one of his mistresses, after all. She was from old money, with social breeding and political clout, while he was new money made on his grandfather's international teddy bear fortune. He was trying to distance himself as a ruthless young hotshot, but lacking in the expected social graces necessary to gain entry within the truly wealthy circles he needed access to in order to take his wealth to the next level. For that he would need a bigger, deeper, and more stable alliance. That was where Rachel fit into his plan. On their third encounter, his arrival was preceded with her father having a meeting with her. "Rachel, that nice young man you met, Kurt, has asked me for your hand in marriage. He is coming to dinner tonight to propose to you. You will accept. Your marriage will be the key to a very lucrative merger of the wealth of our 2 families, and give us even more financial security for generations to come. You will act pleased with the engagement and be happy with the relationship. Make it work. Understand?" That was how he treated her since her mama died. He barked commands at her and she was expected to comply without questions, complaints, or attitude. This was how he treated his employees and now also his daughter. A marriage of convenience for Rachel was no small matter. She was 21 and this would be for the rest of her life. The expectations were clear, including those around children. Kurt arrived and was brief but upbeat. His proposal lacked romance or charm. "So I think you know why I'm here. I think June will be the best time for the ceremony." He gave her the box with a beautiful and expensive-looking engagement ring, from one of the world's biggest and best diamond brokers. It was her mama's ring, given to Kurt by her father. After she looked at it and put it on her own hand, and nodded in agreement, her father and her new fiancé excused themselves to sign some paperwork regarding mergers and acquisitions of their individual wealth and soon-to-be collective holdings. They would celebrate the deal, their engagement, leaving her alone. She had packed a few personal items, including a portrait of her mother, and of course her journal. She didn't bother leaving a note. Instead, she carefully placed her engagement ring on her dresser. Chapter 2. Los Angeles. The wedding was set to take place in the Hamptons, the summer spot for New York City's elite wealthy, and where her family had a summer home. Rachel's father would realize that Rachel was gone at the same instant her plane was touching the tarmac in Los Angeles, where her family had another home and several lucrative businesses. Caterers, florists, musicians and dozens of staff had descended on the mansion, unprepared to deal with the missing bride. Money had been no object, but a wedding without a bride, no matter how little money mattered, was not a part of her father's plan. He needed to present a blissfully happy couple, and their merged business interests before the stock market opened on Monday. He was livid when he found the ring on her dresser. Immediately he called her. "Where are you, young lady? I need you. Here. Now. What on earth is the meaning of all of this? What's going on?" "Daddy, please calm down," she pleaded. "Calm down? I have a right to be angry. It looks like you walked out on the wedding. What should I tell Kurt?" "Kurt? You're worried about Kurt? If he means that much to you, then you marry him. I'm quite sure that he won't even notice the difference as long as a fat check is part of the agreement and he gets to keep his mistresses. We'll be the laughingstock of New York society. How could you pull something like this? Do you know what impact your flight of fancy has had on our two families?" "Me? Okay. Do you mean financially or personally?" she continued. "Can't you see that what's good for business might not be good for me? I know deep down you must care something about me. But this is not the way to do it." After a long, quiet pause, Rachel was not even sure that he had heard any part of her explanation in this bicoastal argument. "Daddy? Do you understand? Can you hear me? This is getting nowhere. I'm going to pursue my own life in LA. When you can stop yelling and threatening me with your selfish ultimata, we can try to talk again. Goodbye." "Rachel. Rachel. Rachel. I'll cut you off, that's right, no inheritance, no allowance, and none of the little perks you enjoy thanks to my wealth. We'll see how long your independence lasts. Don't you hang up that phone on me, missy. Don't you think for a minute that—" "Rachel?" Rachel had left the domestic area of the airport for the international section. She had used her honeymoon ticket to get to LA, so she had some time before father put the pieces together, the largest one being her absence from her wedding. She looked at the different international flights coming in and going out and decided to go on a private honeymoon. This is not what she thought she would be doing in her life ever. From her point of view, this was necessary immediately to reclaim, rest and restore health and sanity. But where? She had limited foreign language skills and planned to make it a long-term stay, maybe even permanent, if she continued to feel the way she felt right now. "Mama, show me the way," she sighed, whispering this prayer for hope and help. Over the intercom, an airline headed to the United Kingdom announced the international flight to England would be boarding within the hour. She hit the ATM and took out as much cash as she could to buy a ticket. She was also prepared for anything with her up-to-date passport. Acting boldly and bravely as an assertion of freedom from two tyrannical men and demonstrating her own power, she bought a ticket. She moved in a blur from the ticket counter through security, and finally to the gate and onto the plane. Now she could breathe. She did not miss or care about Kurt, not as much as her father did anyway. Once she got to England, she would get settled and let her father know she was all right. That should give her a few days of peace. Who knows? Maybe he would have even calmed down. Just before the plane closed the doors for boarding, a devilishly handsome man got on. He was impossible not to notice, tall, dark and handsome, with a thick mane of coiled hair. He was pushing his way around trying to find his seat and room for his carry-on suitcase, backpack, hanging garment bag and bag of fast food goodies. He accidentally hit her with his suitcase as he was trying to put it in a space above head that was already almost full. Ow! Part of his baggage hit Rachel in the head. "There's no more room for you. Try another bin." Without acknowledging having accidentally struck her or apologizing for it, he gruffly said, "You're in my seat," and kept trying to force his luggage where it would not fit. She fished for her boarding pass in her purse. "I think you are mistaken and I'll prove it in a minute," she said, elevating her volume but not yet losing her cool. The sooner the better. He clearly did not care about the typical politeness airline passengers in first class usually extended one another. "Really? Well, you can take your oversized, assaulting bag with you and stuff it right where." Meanwhile, one of the airline stewards first overheard, then observed the exchange between them. He came over and resolved it before any more unnecessary rudeness from the young man became a catalyst in fueling the verbal exchange or the confrontation between himself and the young woman. Instead of making a compromise for more comfort for his long and lanky frame, the gentleman's boarding pass indicated that he would have the middle seat while Rachel would have the aisle. Once it was decided that Rachel was victorious and he was settled in loser in international airline court, she flashed him a bright smile to rub his nose in it. He tried to ignore her and just put his headphones on and blared his music. Loud and even more obnoxious, it was definitely not what she would have chosen. Nevertheless, this rude man came prepared with a soundtrack for blocking her out as much as possible for the rest of their forced time together. There was no need for a further social exchange of any small talk between them or another confrontation. She ordered a champagne cocktail to celebrate her newfound freedom. It was first class and comfortable after all, and she was going to try to enjoy this flight. After a couple of drinks, she put aside her thoughts of the wedding, her father's threats, or the rude but gorgeous man, and slept the whole flight. When she arrived in London, she was fresh from slumber and ready for adventure, feeling more alive than she had since the engagement occurred and the wedding planning began. Honeymoon for one, please, she thought to herself, and destined for adventure alone. Chapter 3: Clovelly. Once the plane landed, Rachel was faced with lots of decisions attacking her for response and resolution all at once. A mix of anxiety and excitement stirred inside her. She was without a plan, but she knew that she needed one. She had left the country. The first matter before her was where she should go next. By the time she collected her bags from baggage claim and exchanged her dollars for pounds, she considered starting over in London, which presented many opportunities if she decided she wanted to stay there. But she didn't. Her father had businesses and offices all over the world. Once he learned that she was not in LA after all, he would just strategically start contacting his different international offices from Berlin to Baghdad and Beijing. Nothing was beyond his control. He would coolly go about checking with his international security personnel. Then he would actively engage them in searching for his daughter, the crazy runaway bride. If he was still as angry as he was when she talked with him on the phone, then she definitely did not have any plans for returning to deal with a tighter rein of his control over her life. Finding her would not be too difficult for her father. Her phone calls and her credit card use could be tracked and she could be located. She was not a child, however, but an adult woman. Her father could not force her to do anything, no matter how rich, strong, and politically powerful he was. Everything so far had been done on calculated whims. England was the same way. She hired a taxi and was on her way to a small seaside village where her late mother had lived briefly. She told her about her life growing up in different countries, then traveling on her own in her early 20s, a much happier time for her, or so it seemed. She loved hearing those stories of her late mother's life abroad, the daughter of a diplomat, before she met and married her father. Her stories revealed a side of her late mother that she had not often seen as a part of their family life. She was a buffer in the small family dynamic of three. Her main goal was to secure a stable future and endless opportunities for her daughter, the apple of her eye. Rachel told the taxi driver to take her to Clovelly. Just as she was sitting back, about to enjoy the ride and forget about her problems, her phone started to ring. "Great," she said with sarcasm. It was Kurt. "Yes. I thought you had more brains and critical thinking skills, being college educated and all that. I guess I thought that common sense was also part of the package. I was wrong." Kurt's tone was sharp and disdainful. No wonder he and her father got along so famously. They both had managed to master the art of how to talk down to a person. No response was possible that would rescue them from being berated by either man. They felt like they were walking on eggshells, just about to break at any time and for any reason, whether within or beyond their immediate control. Before she could respond to his first comments, he cut her off and supplied another put down. "Are you aware that this is an international call? That we had 842 guests here to celebrate our happy union, and we had to turn them away because of your capricious act? You are quite a handful, girl." "I'm a handful," she replied angrily. "You don't know me. You don't know the first thing about me. I'm just a messy part of the deal. I'm someone you have to put up with but not placate, right, Kurt? Well, you left a lot of people behind. We had to tell them something, so your father and I decided to say that you were..." "That I was what? Spill it." "That you were out of medication. There were several doctors in attendance and they helped the guests at the reception to accept and accommodate the regrettable situation with as much ease as possible. They considered that the sheer number of guests might have been too much excitement for you. We were able to spin it to our advantage. So now you have an ace. It wasn't enough to take my inheritance away for not marrying you. It wasn't enough that you lost points with my father. And it wasn't enough that I fled our wedding, leaving you at the altar. You needed ultimate control, a wild card, where you can have me institutionalized at your will and get my father to sign off on it." Nice, Kurt. Nice. There was nothing to go back to and no way of returning without a serious loss. A loss of wealth, independence, and support had all been yielded to a total stranger over a business agreement that her father, her only blood relative, had agreed to without hesitation. "If I know my father well, he provided an escape clause for you of some sort? It's about more than just the money, Rachel." "Yeah, I know. Don't even try to pretend like you care about me in any way. That's all about image. The image of a happy, united front with a multi-billion-dollar, multinational deal as the backstory. You are a supreme A. Go slither back under the rock where you came from, Kurt. With that she ended the call, not waiting for another lie from her past and putative groom. On the way from London to Clovelly, Kurt called her 57 times and left 19 voicemail messages. Upon her arrival, she looked at the sea and looked at her phone. Bringing her closer to other hateful and angry individuals in her life was not what she wanted right now. That was not her idea of marrying well. Escaping exchanging vows and undoing a marriage of convenience became her roundabout way of achieving that success on her own terms. She refused to be considered as the family problem to be managed and kept under control. In Clovelly, she could learn more about what her late mother liked about this village now clearly full of tourist delights. She could learn how to live like average, everyday people, a good although novel experience for her. The first priorities were finding a job and a place to stay. She had converted enough American dollars to British pounds at the airport to last for a while. She had to be careful to use cash instead of her credit card from here on out so she could bury her tracks. After her long international journey, she was tired and hungry. She looked into spending the night at a bed and breakfast that was within her current means and her last luxury. After using her phone to read more about the village, and ignore the unfortunate yet very real possibility more communication from the two men in her life at this point, she turned off her phone and threw it in the sea. Good riddance. Can you track me now? Chapter 4. New Home. The next day after a good night's sleep and a hearty breakfast, Rachel set off to find an apartment. When she mentioned that she was going apartment hunting, the owner of the bed and breakfast suggested finding where she would like to live first, and looking for lawn signs advertising to renters. It was a pretty informal process. She walked the cobbled streets until she found 2 points of interest. A bakery/cafe with heavenly smells emanating from it, and a lovely cottage with a room for rent sign on the lawn. She reminded herself that her first priority was to find long-term lodging, not a tasty pastry and a cup of joe. That would be her celebration treat for finding a place to live. She knocked on the door, not even sure if anyone was at home in the middle of a weekday. At the same moment she was about to turn around and walk away, the door opened and a kind-faced, Earth Mother-looking woman wearing gardening gloves and a wide-brimmed hat appeared. "Hello," Rachel said. "I saw your sign on the lawn for a room to rent. I'm interested and You are American," were the woman's first words to Rachel. "Yes, I am." She wasn't quite sure if that was a good or a bad thing in the prospective landlady's eyes. "And altogether lovely. Please come in. Excuse my appearance and my manners. My name is Beatrice," she said, taking off a gardening glove and extending her right hand to Rachel. "Thanks, Miss Beatrice. I'm Rachel." Once inside, the two ladies had bottomless cups of tea and numerous slices of fresh, warm zucchini bread while talking endlessly about everything except for the room. They got along well and Rachel believed that she could share a living space with this kind woman, if she offered. "Is the room still available?" she prompted Miss Beatrice with a change of subject. "Would you really like to see the room? It's upstairs and very sparsely decorated. Bed, bureau, desk, chair, lamp and closet, plus a private full bathroom and separate back entrance. You don't seem like you'd come with too much baggage, but you can never tell with some. Shall we take a look?" It was everything she needed and wanted. True, she had been used to much more at her father's mansion, but billionaire mansions and English country cottages needed not have a lot in common for her to be comfortable. As long as she had the basics, she knew she would be fine. When Rachel saw it, she instantly knew that she had found the perfect place. She instantly understood why her mother thought this was such a special village. A sweet place in the world. The people and the environment so far were winning her over. "What were you thinking of paying in terms of rent? What do you think is fair?" "It is a very nice house." How about £2,500 sterling a month?" Rachel did not know if that was a good amount for rent or not. Offering an amount at least would get the discussion going. It would also demonstrate that she was seriously interested in the room. "Well, I think we can work something out that will be agreeable to both of us. Come, dear, you still had some tea in your cup." Either this lady was super nice or a figment of her imagination, and she was about to wake up profoundly disappointed. "I have some savings, but I really need a job to make ends meet," Rachel confided in Miss Beatrice. "I'm looking to make a long-term commitment." "That's wonderful. Why, that's a positive step in the right direction. Are you seeing anyone now that would agree to that?" "The commitment? Oh no, I didn't mean a romantic relationship. I was referring to how long I would stay in the room. But in answer to your question, no, I am not currently seeing anyone." "Ah, I must have misunderstood. I have a grandson about your age and I think you two would be good for each other. But first things first. I'll rent you the room. Really? That's great. I have a friend who runs the local bakery in town. Her name's Faye. She's been looking for an extra pair of hands to take on a more committed role. That way she can spend more time running and marketing the business. Whatever she pays you, if she hires you, you can pay me 30% for lodging. Does that sound okay? Yes. Sounds more than okay. Sounds amazing. Thank you, Ms. Beatrice. Rachel leaned over and hugged her new landlady. It is just Beatrice or Grandma. No MS. Or any other titles are necessary. Okay, Beatrice. Great, dear. We'll work on getting you from Beatrice to Grandma. She winked at Rachel. Beatrice wrapped the rest of the zucchini bread for her new tenant to take with her in case she needed a late-night snack. I'll have a month-to-month lease ready for you to sign when you move in. When would you like to move in, dear? After the job offer. Good. That's fine. I'll call Faye and let her know to expect you sometime tomorrow. I'll tell her that we talked and in my humble opinion you are a good egg. Thanks, Ms. Just Beatrice. I'm so pleased that you'll be in the house. Youthful companionship is my antidote for growing older with grace. I've found that to be true in my 75 years of living. I try to surround myself with young people and grow and eat lots of vegetables, of course. Ha! After embracing Beatrice and saying good night, Rachel walked back to the bed and breakfast thinking about everything that had happened in such a short time, and how one significant relationship could make an extraordinary difference. She felt like she had grown wiser and understood her mother's love for this village a little better after today. She was too excited to eat a proper dinner. She would feast on zucchini bread if she got hungry later. Her problems were at the bottom of the sea. Her destiny was all around her and she felt peace and promise, hope and help. She had everything she needed from the universe and she was deeply grateful, falling asleep wondering what new blessings the next day would bring. Chapter 5 New Job. Rachel had never had a job before, but she had been around and observing working people her whole life. She didn't think it could be that hard if so many people could do it. She was a little nervous about meeting Faye, the bakery owner. If Beatrice, her new landlady, recommended this job to her, there had to be goodness in it. She wanted to make a good first impression, so she planned to get there early after borrowing a bike from the bed and breakfast. Now she could just breathe, mentally prepare for any questions the owner might ask, and take in all the quick changes that she was making without stressing out. She had no idea what Faye looked like either, but the bakery was not crowded, so she waited in line to speak with the cashier. One thing she could not hide was her American accent, which drew attention to her immediately. Hi, I am here to meet with Miss Faye. With Faye about a job. My name is Rachel. Why hello Rachel. You're Beatrice's friend, right? I'm Faye. I've been expecting you. Let me ring up these customers and after more people clear out we'll have a chat. Okay. Great. Rachel took a seat and wondered if there was something she could be doing to help out, or make a good impression. She was torn between going behind the bakery counter and serving up the freshly baked sweet goodies whose aroma pervaded the place and staying seated, ignoring all that Faye could use assistance with, leaving her to struggle alone while she remained detached, uninvolved and watched. Should I or shouldn't I? She watched and wondered from her prime seat to all that needed to be done as the customers seemed to multiply with the minutes that passed. When 30 minutes had passed since she first made contact with Faye, she decided she should. If it worked out, then Faye would see how invaluable Rachel was. The big fear facing jumping in and helping out was that she was more accustomed to being served than serving. Her gut feeling was that it could not be too hard. Plus, Faye definitely needed her help. She was taking buns out of the oven, wrapping up the assorted baked goods, pouring up the tea and coffee orders, and running the cash register. She was a one-woman show and her audience was running out of patience while they waited. How about if I wrap the pastries and pour up the tea while you run the cash register and prepare any specialty beverages? Thank you, honey. You are a lifesaver. And I don't need to have any long interview with you. You're hired. Grab an apron, tie your hair back and put on some gloves. For a long while it was just the two of them against the world. But after the morning rush the shop traffic slowed down enough for her new boss to breathe. If we could have that kind of traffic every morning, I'd be pleased as punch. The problem is, customer interest is growing. Yet I don't have any help so that I can meet or even anticipate the needs. Those needs are growing quickly, almost beyond my capacity right now. I'm almost at wit's end and may have to turn down some of the larger or special event jobs. You came here just in time, honey. What a happy problem, Rachel said with a smile. Yes, I guess it is. We have about half an hour before the coffee break customers come in. Let's get to know each other better while we do some recovery and preparation duties. Oh, I almost forgot, do you have open availability? Or can you only work certain hours? I currently have no other commitments. Not even a puppy. Use me when and how you need me. I'm at your service, she lightly answered, adding a curtsy at the end of her response. Ha! A sense of humor too. I like that, honey. You'll need to not take yourself too seriously here. You've got that Yankee spirit and spunk, that's for sure. They restocked, baked, brewed, swept, and managed the earlier crowd's financially positive effect on the cash register, while chatting it up. 30 minutes later, the crowd was back and ready again to buy more food and drink. They made a good team. I usually close after 4 o'clock tea, but now that you're here, maybe we could stay open to capture the younger folks looking for a spot to pop in to hang out with their various devices and virtual social lives. Okay. I'm up for almost anything. It sounds like a great idea, Faye. You'll be my right and left arms. I'm already relying on you and indebted to you, and your interview just became your first day on the job. I'm not overwhelming you, am I, honey? Not at all. This is great. Better than I ever could have imagined. I need a job like this for more than financial reasons. Really? Do tell. That is, if you are willing to share some of your story. It won't go any further if you want me to know. And you trust me with your secret. Not even to Beatrice, and we've been friends since childhood. Okay. Thanks. She felt had to invent a little white lie to keep the conversation going and put any further discussion of personal details at rest. Well, I'm American, but when I lost my mother, my father, and my fiancé all within the space of 3 months, I decided that I needed a change of scenery, and a way to put all of the familiar behind me. Everything I encountered seemed to remind me of my loss. I just had to get away. So I packed up and left. And now I'm here. How long do you plan on staying, if I'm not digging too deep? Longer than a tourist. I'm looking for a place that I could call my new home. The way I see it, Clovelly has lots to offer. Small and friendly. I'd like to be a part of the parish, not an outsider. Well, you hit pay dirt, honey, because I can show you around town and help you to get in good with the locals. There may only be 400 of us, but we're a kind, tight-knit bunch. You won't find folks any finer. Welcome. On behalf of Clovelly, I welcome you. She did not know why she lied, but it had just enough reality spun through it to actually make her tear up. She hugged Faye and just held on for what seemed like a long time while the sense of loss of people and an vanishing hope passed through her. She missed her late mother and the father and fiancé she wished that she had in the lie she just told. There, honey. It is going to be all right. It'll be dark soon and a challenge riding the bicycle. I hope you weren't planning on moving into Beatrice's place with just that as your only form of transportation, were you? Actually, yes, I was. I only have a small suitcase in my backpack. Not much. I remember those days. So young and life was full of promise. If you can wait until I close up shop, I'll take you back to the bed and breakfast to collect your things, and then we'll head to Beatrice's place. I have a bike rack on the back of my vehicle. We can drop it off at the rental place on the way. Thank you in advance for all of your help, Faye. If it weren't for you and Beatrice, then I don't know what I'd do. Honey, you're gonna make me tear up too. They hugged, closed up, and set out for making Rachel's dreams of a new life a reality in progress. Chapter 6. First job. Rachel had almost managed to put her old life behind her, especially including her wedding. She had found a place to live and landed a job. That is, what was becoming old news to her was still of world interest. However, it was hard to take a surprise reminder about that old life when she looked at an article in a left-behind British tabloid about the rich and famous. Billionaires and Teddy Bear King postpone merger marriage. The headline read. Postponed. She was intrigued and grateful. Her old life was now world news, but without her in it. She cautioned herself about seeking truth or comfort from a tabloid and threw it away. Good morning. Beatrice greeted her with the warmth and cheer of spring sunshine when Rachel came downstairs to the kitchen. Are you hungry? Or do you just want some cold cereal for a real-life American-style breakfast? She shook her head no to all of it and left for work. Faye beat Rachel's arrival to open the cafe by mere moments. Once the doors were unlocked, alarm off, and lights on, she beckoned to her. Rachel, I'm going to teach you the business. I've decided. I never had children and as a result no grandchildren, but from here on out I adopt you. You are my protégé. The day's lesson from Faye was on smiling as a greeting and an easy, although not effortless, silent form of customer service. I don't know what you are going through, honey, but you have to learn to check your feelings at the door in this business. Some are kind customers who tip generously and some are so rude you want to slap some sense into them, but they all have money to spend. We want them to spend as much as possible and as often as possible here. Clear. Crystal, Rachel replied coolly. Several times during the day she noticed Faye checking on her from a distance and smiling with pleasure at her protégé. No one needed to know the truth about who Rachel was and where she had come from. Her private boarding school and Ivy League education, and always being the one served instead of the one doing the serving. Her new life defied explanation or preparation, given her background and pedigree. But it was hers. She was not lowering herself. She was starting over. Today, once the breakfast rush was over, Faye checked in to see how Rachel thought she was doing on customer service. Okay. I'm doing okay. Good. Only you decide how much of yourself you agree to let them see or have access to. No one hurts you unless you let them do so. Control the experience, don't be controlled. Smile. Okay, enough pep talk, granddaughter. Let's have a quick tea break before they take theirs, okay? Rachel decided that Faye and Beatrice were great fairy godmothers in her new adventure. To stay strong and independent from her father's money and connections and the trust fund her late mother had left her, she would take each day, one day at a time, so as not to get overwhelmed. Warm, freshly baked bread, farmer's butter, and locally sourced honey with Darjeeling tea hit the spot, especially since she skipped breakfast with Beatrice. Thank you, Faye. The rest of the day zoomed by filled with smiles and service. Here and now, she was the agent, the protagonist, the creator in her story. She would not take the gift of building a new life lightly. She resolved that she would make it on her own based on who she was becoming or not at all because of who she used to be. Faye was impressed with Rachel's knack for customer service and trusted her with the shop. So far Rachel had only worked as Faye's helper, and shone in this role. If she continued to work this well in the more technical aspects of the job, like operating the cash register and easy baking, then Faye could take a much-needed day off. The next day was better because her confidence was increasing in her new normal, as bakery/cafe associate. Good morning, honey. Faye greeted Rachel, who was waiting to be let into the shop. Good morning. You'll have to remind me to get you a set of keys and go over the security system. The code is simple. It's sweet. Rachel smiled. Today, I'm going to train you on some of the more challenging aspects of the shop. Depending on how quickly you can learn and do them will dictate when I can leave you alone in the shop, responsible for the daily operations. Rachel was worried. She had never worked before. She was unsure if she could make the cash register sing as she rang up orders or multitask, so that she could stay on top of ongoing baking tasks. I want you to have that time. You deserve it. But I don't know if I can swing things smoothly on my own. Don't you worry. By the end of the day, both of us will have had a jolt of self-confidence. Believe me, my confidence in you will grow and yours in your new role will increase with more experience, especially after dealing with the demands of the shop when it is busy. I will then give you the title of assistant manager and a small raise. How about that? Wow, Rachel gushed. But I've never actually. Never what, honey? I've never worked in a bakery before. She left it at that. Another truth artfully shared to cover up a more significant omission. That's okay. I'm sure you'll pick it up in no time. It's not like you never worked before. Faye laughed out loud at the thought. Go ahead and grab an apron and I'll take you through everything that should happen in a regular day. OMG, OMG, OMG. Rachel was not sure if she could be a trainable employee/assistant manager and quick enough study in this new fast-paced world of hot tea and breakfast biscuits. Rachel was encountering the limits and challenges of working for a living beyond the fairy tale characteristics of her new life in Clovelly. She first fell in love with this village when it came to carving out her independence, but the white lies and dangerous omissions she told were causing that life to crumble before her eyes. If only she could find a way to strengthen this insecure foundation. Her new responsibilities based on the expectations of others were filling in the cracks of her untruths. Any discomfort she felt at this moment was her own fault. She was overwhelmed purely due to her minimizing what she had not done or allowing assumptions about what she skillfully failed to say. Okay, she called from the back of the shop where the washer and dryer churned out cleanliness to maintain the quality service linens that set this bakery/cafe apart from some more substantial, industrial, multinational, similar businesses. You look ready for action, honey. Here's your job description to review and read and some other onboarding paperwork you can complete later once you get back to your room. Smile. It's not rocket science. How did she ever think she was going to work in a bakery and just be responsible for smiling and shadowing but never actually baking or ringing up a sale? How foolish she was and how frightened she was becoming. That day of working helped Rachel progress from awful to acceptable and almost finished with awesome. Almost. But she was still the new girl. At least one customer was dissatisfied and made it known at the top of her voice to the owner. Her name was Jane Jones. She was hard to miss or forget. The young lady was determined to find fault and complain about her experience in the shop at the hands of the new girl, who mashed her raspberry and cheese-filled donut by carelessly setting a piping hot cup of Earl Grey tea on top of instead of next to it without properly or securely sealing the top, leading to a stage 1 mess all over her jacket, laptop bag, and the inside of her tote bag-sized purse. Faye, how can you expect me to go to my meeting with all of this mess? Why ever would you hire someone whose only skill is ineptitude? Did she get some BS degree in incompetence? I at least want an apology and a promise never to let it happen again. I come here every single day of the week and on the weekends. I spend about as much time as a part-time screw-up like her does, and I could have done it better. This isn't right. Everyone makes mistakes. Rachel mumbled, no longer able to contain her anger or withhold her tongue and temper. After she served and rang up the last customer, Rachel marched from behind the counter where the cash register was to confront this disgruntled lady. Ma'am, I could not help but overhear that you were speaking to the manager about the lack of quality of service you felt I gave you. I apologize and would like to know what we can do to properly ensure that we don't lose you as a valued customer, and make it up to you today. I am new and still learning. I do not feel that you should talk to anyone that way, and especially about something as minor as my error. Everyone makes mistakes. But you are the customer, a loyal one, and I want you to know I am here to help serve you, but not to be your cafe servant or bakery slave. Rachel was surprised she was able to stand up for herself like that. Jane had never been spoken to like that. She responded with a more humble request after Rachel's slight, very public humiliation of her. She probably expected to shame and hurt Rachel. And Rachel, although new to the world of work, was sure that addressing a customer the way she had talked to this woman was probably not the benchmark for the kind of customer service Faye had in mind or the woman had come to expect with her nasty attitude and, until then, her unchecked rude remarks. Black tea and a new pastry, she responded in a small quiet voice, following a few painfully silent moments after the confrontation. Pardon, Rachel said to her, her voice volume increasing with her self-confidence level rising. Black tea and a new pastry, please. Okay. She left her to refill her order but never took her eyes off of Jane, a 20-something attorney at law. Here you go. I put some extra cloth napkins in the bag. Just bring them back the next time you pop in. Again, apologies. Faye and Rachel waited until the pit bull turned Chihuahua silently left the store, and then once alone together, with the morning rush and uncharacteristic customer rudeness well behind them, they gave each other high fives. Then the bakery vigilante and the advocate owner quietly returned to work with smiles on their faces and pride in their. Chapter 7, In My Bed. There's only one first time, Rachel thought to herself, and she had had hers working in a bakery in England. Now broken into the world of work, she could look forward to some me time after her shift. You did a great job today. I was so proud of my adopted granddaughter. You also handled that Jane Jones situation with the calm and cool of the ripest of cucumbers, honey. You can sleep in tomorrow and come in later. You deserve it. We'll have a strategic planning session about how to transition from solely a daytime place to an after-hours hangout also, and still earn a profit. Oh wow, Faye. Thanks for your compliments and for this job. It is exactly what the doctor ordered. Thanks for coming along at just the right moment as well. Are you sure you'll be all right alone tomorrow? Definitely, honey. I did it before you came and I can do it if you are not here. Arthur, Beatrice's grandson, helped me out in the past, on school breaks and around the holidays. He is a nice young man, just not really good with customer service. It's always either too busy or when it's not busy, I'm still busy catering, baking, marketing. I wear so many hats. Demand for us is high and I don't want to have the kind of new business growing pains that makes us unable to meet that demand or have extended hours. Get some rest. After today you earned it and then some, honorable. She bid her boss goodbye with a kiss on each cheek and left to explore the village of Clovelly. Although her plan was to go as far as her feet would take her. Her feet were tired from standing on them all day, and using muscles she did not even know she had. She walked a few paces through the village shops, ignored her aching feet and muscles, and skipped the errands in favor of a look around a quaint little dress shop. In her former life she would have spent not only her time but also her money. She would not have been walking either. She would have had the driver place her shopping bags and boxes from boutiques and elite shops in the trunk of an expensive imported sedan, one of her father's town cars that was at her disposal. Her packaged, couture treasures were often purchases only to be worn once and afterward usually found their way to the back of her closet. Now shopping was limited by her worker's wage, food and lodging budget, and competed with lower back pain and her general fatigue from smiling while talking about nothing and anticipating, then putting the needs of others before her own. She wasn't exactly shallow, but she wasn't exactly deep either. Beatrice might be enjoying her alone time by the time she got back home, so she planned to use the back separate entrance after getting a Wednesday night pub special of shepherd's pie and some amber lager. This meal, although she had never had it before, was delicious, savory, comfort food after being around sweets all day long. She would have stayed longer since it was karaoke night, but given the choice between belting one out and bedding down, tonight she opted for the latter. She splurged for a taxi ride home to her rented room. I am okay. I have enough. All is well, she said quietly to herself as a necessary affirmation to deal with so much change in so short a period of time. She tried to imagine any of her fellow debutante, society girlfriends doing the same thing, but she couldn't. Just like them before being forced into a merger marriage, as the tabloid called it, she did not see the need to do something that big. Never before was she so excited to return anywhere in her entire life. She climbed the back stairs and unlocked the door to her rented room. A peaceful paradise with few distractions, not even a hint of modernity like cable or a phone. The lights in the rest of the house were out. Beatrice was probably asleep. Rachel was too tired to hang up any of her dresses, so she made a beeline for the bathroom to brush her teeth, shower to soothe her working woman's aches and pains, and change into her nightgown. As she brushed her teeth, she reminisced about her late mother. She wondered if her mom would be proud of her for making a go of things on her own, getting long-term lodging and a stable job, even though she was of more than sufficient means never to have to want or need to do either. She thought about what was waiting for her back in the States, and how the rudest person she had met so far was no match for her father or Kurt. She was ready to sleep at least 9 hours. She was not completely acclimated to her new time zone, and was glad to have a late shift the next day for the first time. She lit the lavender candle she saw in the bathroom with a book of matches she found next to it from the same pub where she enjoyed a lovely dinner and local atmosphere. She used the scented light source to see her way back to her room, and give herself a shot of aromatherapy ensuring a peaceful night's sleep. She got into a full bed of 2 twin mattresses pushed together, for her pleasure and comfort, she imagined, and then leapt straight out while screaming for help. A man suddenly sat up, his chest bare, his cotton boxer shorts on full display. Bloody. Chapter 8. Who are you? Get up and get out. Who are you and what are you doing in my bed? She grabbed a pillow and hit him over the head. Your bed? Who are you to tell me to get out? This house belongs to my grandmother, including the bed. I know that I have a right to be here and have the key. So who are you? Grandmother? Just get out. Now. I am renting the room from Beatrice, she added with more pillow hits. Hey, stop. It's more my business than yours. Just let me get dressed and I'll be out of here. The sooner the better. She tossed the pillow back on the bed. If you don't believe me, just go downstairs and wake my grandmother just so you can have peace of mind if you must. Or you could take my word for it, let me leave and sort everything out in the morning. He hopped about, putting on his pants, then slipped his hoodie over his head. It was not fast enough for Rachel. It also did not sit well with her that some man, no matter what relationship he supposedly had with Beatrice, had the key to her room. All she wanted to do was rest and she came home and had to deal with this mess. His voice was angry and confused, but also somehow familiar, and with a surprising American lilt. Help me find my other sock, he grumbled, more awake than before but still rude. Help you? What do you think this is? Who do you think I am? I'm neither your nanny or your maid. Find your own dim end sock, Rachel shouted back. You do realize, miss, he said calmly, trying to look around for it while addressing Rachel at the same time, that the faster I find that sock, the faster I am out of here? Grandmother. Rachel wondered to herself, now enlisted in the search for the stranger's sock. He could be lying. He could be a madman. He could be here to rob, rape, and kill her. A million thoughts went through her head, none of them grounded in reality or experience. Prove yourself. Prove your identity, she demanded. Okay, fine. I guess I have ID around here somewhere. Where's my wallet? Great, she said sarcastically. It seems like you've misplaced everything except for the key to my room. It was my room before it was yours and I helped Grandma convert it to a rentable space. But that's not important. Just help me and I'll be out of your hair, Mississippi. You should not be making demands of me. You know that if you cannot prove your identity, I could call the cops and have you escorted out. Go ahead and call the constables. They should have a good laugh at your expense. My grandma is on the community council, and they know her and me and have since before I was born. You would be the one having to prove identity in the wee hours of the morning. I bet you wouldn't like that too much, would you? Look, I'm tired. I just want to go to bed. Can't we find a way to coexist until you find all your stuff and leave? Agreed. he said, more relaxed and a little less abrupt than before. They looked under the bed, the sheets, and everywhere on the floor and around the sparse furniture. As they searched together on this united sock search mission, she couldn't get over how gorgeous he was. His thick, coiled, almost curly hair and café au lait complexion revealed that he might be biracial. His tall, muscular build, perfect for playing rugby or rowing crew, made him very easy on the eyes. Wait a minute, his voice breaking up her reverie. I think I found something. It was a pair of her gray knit, patterned tights that must have slipped behind the dresser while she was unpacking and putting her things away. Those are mine, she said, quickly moving to rescue them from him with a quick snatch. For the first time she caught him almost cracking a smile. I'll check the bathroom, brushing past her abruptly. He must have just had a shower before she arrived. She could smell the scent of sandalwood, one of the guest soap selections, coming from him. She had not noticed it earlier. It was faint but powerfully enticing. She was still tired from her shift and looked forward to sleeping herself. Obviously, the young man was having an effect on her, 1 week after being a runaway bride. No matter what she did or how she tried to find the sock and get him out of the room, she just could not place him, however. There was something about him and his voice that stuck with her. The plane, she exclaimed. We sat next to each other on the plane from the States. He was underwhelmed. Okay? Any luck with the sock or the wallet? Don't you remember? She obviously had not made an impact of any sort on him. Not really, but I travel a lot, so that is not saying much. Now where did I take them off? Are you sure you looked under the bed? I think I'll check one more time. Just think, all of this effort for a sock. That sock has precious sentimental value. Just look for it, please. Once again Rachel had managed to get on his bad side. She promised herself not to say anything further and to just look for the sock, then be free of this man. Should she ask for his key? Or was that even within her rights or her role as one of his grandmother's tenants? Here's the wallet. I must have put it in my shoes. And I believe, yes, the sock is pushed down to the toe of the left shoe. Wonderful. Okay, thanks for your help. Sorry about the inconvenience. He put on his leather jacket and easily left her without so much as a goodbye. Chapter 9. He's yours? Rachel woke up early even though she went to bed later than she wanted. She decided to check out the rude young man's claim of being Beatrice's grandson by cashing in the implied rain check for breakfast with his supposed grandmother. Beatrice must have either read Rachel's mind or communicated with her grandson, but breakfast was waiting for her as if she had planned it in advance. Beatrice greeted her with a big warm hug. Sit down, dear, everything is almost ready. I went by a recipe on one of those online recipe pages. I hope it hits the spot. It did. Beatrice had prepared a spread of blueberry muffins, black tea, fruit salad, yogurt, eggs, and bacon. If I went by what my grandson likes to eat, I would have only prepared coffee and toast done on both sides. She giggled at her own joke and invited Rachel to sit down. Rachel had a big appetite this morning and the breakfast was delicious. Afterward, she helped Beatrice with the dishes and shared the high points of the exchange she had last night in her room. I think I might have met your grandson last night. Really, dear, do tell. He is so hard to keep up with. Seems like he is always traveling. You know, the room you are staying in used to be his. We built it so that he could have privacy to study law but always be close by his grandma. It worked for him and me. That explains a lot, like the minimalist decor and his having a key. I forgot to communicate to him that the room was rented, so he should stay with me in the main part of the house. Oopsie. I apologize, dear. Nothing too bad transpired, I hope. I found him in my bed when I got home and it turned out we had been on the same plane to England from the States. Oh my goodness. I wanted you two to meet, but I did not intend for it to be quite so shocking. Well, at least you had an icebreaker. Rachel decided it was better to leave out the disappointing details about how rude her grandson was to her, and left it at having met. With all of the excitement, however, I failed to get his name. Arthur, dear. He has had a hard time of it. His mom was American like you, and she recently passed away after a long fight with cancer. His dad was my son. They had a wonderful love story until things ran their course, so to speak. His mom went back to America when she got sick and left Arthur with his dad to raise him to be a man. He felt like she abandoned him in his teen years just when he felt he needed her most. But when do you not need a mom's influence? Well, we'll talk more later about that story. Here comes Mr. Sunshine now. Grandma, I have some errands to run in town. Do you need anything? Why, that's so considerate, my dear sweet boy. I'm fine, but I'm sure Rachel would appreciate a ride into town instead of taking a bus or a bicycle. Supposed to rain. Be a gent, love, and transport her. Yes. Okay, Grandma. Mr. Sunshine was quickly transforming into Mr. Storm Cloud with his grandmother's new tenant. Shall we leave in 10 minutes, miss? My name is Rachel, not Mississippi. I was thinking of going to the library before my shift. Can you drop me off there? Fine, Rachel. Rachel smiled her thanks to Beatrice for anticipating her need. I was planning on staying late and studying there, so I'm not sure how our schedules will coordinate in terms of getting back. Make it work, grandson, as a special favor to me. We want Rachel to feel welcome, don't we? Yes, ma'am. Rachel noted what a perfect young gentleman he was with his grandmother. It was a night and day's difference between that sweetness and the angry verbal exchange he had with Rachel last night. No wonder he was studying law. Ready when you are, Rachel said as sweetly as she could. Fine, Rachel, he repeated, his special etiquette mantra, as kindly as he could muster. Arthur grabbed his laptop case and backpack and held the main door of the house open to her as any true gentleman would. He unlocked the car doors remotely and held the car door open until she was safely inside and seat belted up. Then he revealed the Arthur she had met on the plane and in the rented room. Arthur the Shoal. Don't think for a minute that I am doing any of this for you. I am doing it for my grandmother, who means the world to me. We live at the same place, so we have to get along, but I am not your taxi for hire and we are not friends. Got it? Got it, she repeated like a reprimanded child being put in her place. She agreed on the boundaries he was setting on their relationship from the outset. She had no choice. He started the car and headed toward town. She stared out the window sadly with tears in her eyes and in silence for the rest of the trip into town. Would she ever be treated well by any man? Even just a friend or associate? She thought of her dad, Kurt, and now even a stranger like Arthur. All of them seemed to hate her. She decided that she would be all business from here on out and not try to make friends, especially with any members of the opposite sex. Chapter 10 New Life. She did not miss her old wealth in her new life. She would just consider it and the trade-offs of the old life with the freedom to do and be as she chose. She allowed herself to feel the loss, then let the thought pass. She had a routine and duties that made her part of the community: bakery and fae, new dress on payday, library before work on late workdays, pub for shepherd's pie and karaoke after work for dinner on early workdays, and on her day off, cleaning her Spartan room and doing her laundry after a full breakfast and catch-up conversation with Beatrice. 90% of her life was good, and that percentage was almost good enough. She liked the structure and the rhythm of it. Within a matter of months, she knew everyone, thanks to working at the bakery and hanging out at the pub, and most of all getting the okay and vetting from her two fairy godmothers of Beatrice and Faye. And everyone knew her, and almost everyone accepted her new presence in the village except maybe for one, Arthur. By the time that her 1 month, her personal timetable of trying it out had told, she discovered that she did not want to leave. Work led to wellness for her, and she would not trade the simple town and the mostly good people who lived in it except maybe for one, Arthur. The only predictable thing about him was that he was always rude whenever he bumped into her. Deliberately or accidentally did not matter to Rachel, since he never apologized for his ongoing general negativity and bad mood. Try as she might, she could not achieve a perfect score of acclamation. It was impossible at all costs to avoid Arthur, to whom she doubted she could ever become acclimated. They were both in the same house. They were both connected to Beatrice socially. They both lived in the same small town. They both frequented the same spots in town, and had a similar disciplined schedule and routine at home. It seemed like Arthur was everywhere she was and inescapable. If it wasn't at home, then it was at the library. If it wasn't at the bakery, then it was at the pub. Plus, thanks to Beatrice, they became daily carpool comrades and once-a-week brunch mates at her table. Faye was in cahoots with Beatrice and made sure that Rachel was the one who waited on him whenever he came to the bakery for coffee and donuts. The only way they would see each other anymore would be if they were married, God forbid. Beatrice, I see what you are trying to do with Arthur and me, and it just won't work. They had finished sharing a meal together, and Rachel used the downtime before doing the dishes together as the opportune time to confront Beatrice about her intentions for her and her grandson. What's that, dear? I'm not sure I understand what you mean. What do you think I'm doing? Playing a combination of senior citizen senility, hearing loss, and naivete. You're trying to throw us together and match us up. We're just too different. Plus he can't stand me. That's the major barrier. Well, if that's true, and I'm not saying whether it is or whether it isn't, how do you feel about him? Okay. I think he is without a doubt the rudest person I've ever met. He takes pleasure, it seems, in being mean to me. And if any bad fortune came to me, I truly believe that he would sing and dance and hope for even more rottenness to occur to me. You still did not answer my question. You just said he was rude. How do you feel about him? I have absolutely no opinion of him. Tell the complete truth. Tell me how you felt when you first saw him on the plane, or discovered him half-naked sleeping in your bed. Gorgeous. Rachel spoke in a small, almost inaudible voice. Pardon me, dear. I could not hear you. Arthur is simply gorgeous. Rachel stood up and said at the top of her voice. Then, be it fate, luck, or coincidence, Arthur walked through the door at the very instant she was screaming his name. Well, if we ever had nothing to talk about in this house, using outside voices when inside should be forbidden, he said, directed to Rachel, given that I am studying for the New York and California bar exams and need peace and quiet. After that he grabbed a muffin and a piece of bacon from the breakfast cart, then disappeared. The two ladies knew he was going to bury himself in the books for an hour in time for him to join the live stream bar review classes from America. Beatrice and Rachel waited for him to depart and then burst out laughing. See, Beatrice, he's oblivious. He definitely has his eyes on the prize, dear. Arthur did not have time for a relationship while studying for back-to-back bar exams, but once he was admitted to the practice of law in 2 states and in England, he would be a force to be reckoned with and probably looking for someone to settle down and share it all with. Maybe they were too different after all. Rachel was well educated, but not seeking out a high-powered career. She had money from both sides of her family. She was rich. Other than that, she did not think about earning lots of money like many young professionals did, especially in America. She did not think of earning money as important either until she had to have a way to support herself without her father being able to trace her tapping into her trust fund and bring her back to America. Gorgeous and smart but rude. Rachel amended her response to Beatrice in a neutral, more quiet tone. The first 2 qualities do not outweigh the last, so I'll have to pass on Arthur and focus. Chapter 11, His Old Life. Rachel did not like the idea of anyone not liking her, but she did not feel like she could confront Arthur. She decided to do the next best thing and ask his grandma. Beatrice, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I don't think Arthur likes me. What makes you say that, dear? He's always been cordial. That's just it. When you're around, he's cordial. When it's just us commuting or even going back to when we were on the plane or in the rented room, he is rude and abrupt. I've begun to wonder if I did something to make him angry. Has he mentioned anything to you? No, dear. There might be one thing, but it's outside your control. What? What is it? Just tell me and I'll change it or do it, whatever it takes. Well, dear, you are American. From the sound of things, so is he. No. He was born here when his parents were still together. But his late mother was American. I do believe that is why. They had a complex relationship at the end. He took a year off of law school to live stateside and take care of her when she was diagnosed with cancer. He never agreed with the choice to leave him behind in England with his father. Even though that was my son, I tend to agree. Really? Truly. My son just sent him to boarding schools or military schools. Arthur did not seem to fit in anywhere. My son never spent the quality time that his ex-wife hoped he would with their son in his teen years. Frankly, I believe that he just was not up to the task of child rearing during those difficult teen years, especially not as a single father. I see. Also, although both his parents loved him dearly, Arthur's biracial heritage was a challenge for his father. My son could teach him how to be British, but he could not teach him how to be black. Arthur did not feel accepted by either community in the UK. He always felt that things would have been better for him in the USA. But this is just my theory, dear. Do you think this is why he is geared toward passing the bar in 2 states, and not using his legal skills here? Perhaps. He'd probably need to join a firm in London. Clovelly might be too small to support the services of an Oxford-educated barrister. And his father? Where is he? Unfortunately, he died in an auto accident the night before Arthur was supposed to graduate law school. It hit Arthur hard, I know. Maybe he feels like he had 2 parents that did not understand him? Maybe he feels like he never had the chance to make things right with either of them before he lost them both? I can't say for sure, but if he seems angry at you, he may be angry because you remind him of his mom and the cultural upbringing he didn't have. Oh no, what can I do? I don't think you can do much more than you are already doing. This is something he has to work through on his own. It is his cross to bear. Try not to take it personally. Okay. Noted. Oh my, we've talked all morning and afternoon and now it is almost time for tea. Would you care to help me out in the kitchen, dear? One last thing. Yes, dear. What was your son's name? I did not mention it, did I? No, you didn't, and I thought it was a little odd. It was Arthur as well. I did not want to confuse you. My grandson is a 3rd. We called him Trey in the family while he was growing up, but after both of his parents passed, he wanted to be called Arthur. Your guess is as good as mine for why. Perhaps it is as a memorial of his father, and those who went before him with that name. After tea, Rachel and Beatrice worked in the garden together, exchanging light pleasantries and enjoying the sunshine. The late afternoon rain brought them inside just in time to greet Arthur when he came home from the library to find the both of them covered in dirt. "Hello, grandson," she said while giving him a big hug. "Did you eat yet, Arthur?" "Not yet, ma'am. I guess I lost track of time at the library. I opened and closed the place, Grandma." "That's my boy. You'll pass those bar exams without any trouble." "Oh, Grandma," he said, a little shy after the compliment. "I am a wee bit biased, but if I can't brag about my grandson, then who can I brag about?" He went over and kissed her on a dirt-free spot on the cheek, ignoring Rachel. "I'll get cleaned up and supper will be ready in half an hour. Did you greet Rachel, Arthur?" "No," he said coolly. "Hello." Even though she now knew the backstory to his rudeness, it did not make her feel any less slighted by him. She could not change her heritage and neither could he. "Do you need any help, Beatrice? I can bring some salad greens in from the garden if you want, now that the rain has stopped." "That would be a great idea. I'm going up to my room. I can get some more studying in before it is time to eat." "Sounds like a plan, Arthur." Rachel tried to soften him up before he left. "Well, you have to take a break sometime. I doubt you'd know anything about it. My entire ability to work in my profession rests on these tests. There's more to it than just baking overpriced bread and sweets." Then he left them both. "See, Beatrice, nothing I say is good enough." She gave Rachel a hug and patted her on the back. "Let's make the best dinner ever, dear. A man's heart is through his stomach, as the saying goes. If that is true, then I'll have to cook 3 meals a day for 365 days straight just to get the smallest acknowledgement from Arthur." She wondered why she had not yet given up hope on Arthur. Maybe it was the way he made her heart race when he looked not at, but through her. Maybe it was his momentary detours from rudeness when he talked with his grandma. Rachel and Beatrice were a natural fit that felt like family, so Rachel decided that she would keep trying, in hopes of at least 1/10 of the same rapport someday with Arthur. Chapter 12. Confrontation. Rachel liked the idea and the feel of working, but it was not without its occasional problems. Mostly these came in the form of customer service. She got along well with almost everyone who came to the bakery except for one woman, Jane, a young, up-and-coming lawyer who had graduated a year ahead of Arthur at Oxford. Jane was in her mid-20s, a corporate lawyer with one of the biggest, most powerful firms in London, and always had a negative attitude, a bad disposition, and was never satisfied. Rachel would tell herself that this would be the ideal match for Arthur, since they both were so angry and mean in most of their interactions with her. "Mississippi. Mississippi, miss." Jane was trying to get Rachel's attention. Rachel was alone at the bakery during the coffee hour, and she had her hands full with customers. "I'll be with you in 1 minute, Rachel replied. All she needed was another one of Jane's criticisms while she was doing her best to be baker and cashier, and desperately trying to prove herself in her new role of assistant manager. People like that did not like being told that they had to wait, and believed that they were entitled to special privileges as far as customer service was concerned. Jane was no different. "What I have to say to you will take less than the 1 minute you are asking me to wait." "Fine." Rachel wiped her flour-dusted hands after she rang up the last person in line, and went to see what the young lawyer was upset about this time. "Listen up, miss, because I don't intend to have to repeat myself. Stay away from Arthur or you'll regret it." "What? Ma'am, really believe me that you have nothing to worry about. We've known each other since we were children. You're not from around here, so I doubt you know our long personal history. Don't you dare think I haven't noticed him dropping you off and picking you up. Don't think that I don't know that you share the same roof. Answer me yes, ma'am, if you can understand and have no personal intentions or aspirations regarding Arthur other than as house guest. Answer me, it. "Yes, ma'am." Rachel had trouble responding to the threat of this young woman, who apparently had been eyeing Arthur for a long time. If Faye had been here, Rachel believed that there was no way Jane would have dared to talk to her like a bully. "Good. I believe we now understand each other." With that, she turned her back to Rachel and exited the bakery, red-bottomed pumps punctuating her departure as she moved quickly, and with purpose across the wooden floor. Her smile was one of satisfaction, the kind of victory she was used to getting from those professionals or personal rivals who challenged her in any way. Jane was about 25 years old, tall and slender, yet curvaceous, and had steel-gray eyes and long, straight, jet-black hair. She was the kind of person who gave lawyers a bad name. One thing that became clearer with each interaction they had, she believed that she had to instill fear to get her way. The main problem was that she wanted her way all the time. If she knew who my father was, she would have been the one left tearing up and quaking in her boots, Rachel said under her breath after the lady slammed the door behind her when she left the shop. She knew that she wasn't a threat to Jane's relationship to Arthur, but thinking about him choosing this rude lawyer over her made her sad. On paper, the two lawyers belonged together. Jane and Arthur were everything together that a match between Rachel and Arthur was not. They were a power couple in the making. They shared the same profession, education, social background, upbringing, and intellectual class. She was considered to be beneath people like that, a novel experience for her now that she had no access to her father's multinational, multi-billion-dollar fortune. Rachel and Jane were in different leagues. Arthur had never given Rachel a second thought the few times they literally bumped into each other. The lack of consideration of her and the choice of someone like Jane made Rachel wonder why she ever thought she could ever dream or believe that he could ever be interested in someone like her. Rachel had no claims on him, yet envisioning him with Jane, this lawyer lady, this bully of a beast, left her profoundly disappointed and slightly depressed without an acceptable explanation after knowing him a little over a month. Rachel thought if he would choose her the way she was now, that he was not superficial. Considering his choice of Jane instead, forced Rachel reconsider the real possibility that Jane and Arthur had more values in common than Rachel wanted to believe. Faye and Beatrice walked in the bakery as if on cue. "Honey, what's wrong?" "Yes, you have hurt and pain written all over your face." Rachel turned her back to them for a moment to wipe the now flowing, yet silent tears with her apron. In her effort to mask her emotions by wiping her tears away, she had left traces of flour all over her face. Come, can't be all that bad. I left you alone and the bakery didn't burn down. That's a bonus, Faye said with a wink, trying to change Rachel's tears into laughter. Poor sweet one, why don't you take your morning break and freshen up? Maybe even go for a walk to the park up the street to clear your head. Dealing with customers all day can be draining. It'll be all right, I promise. Beatrice hugged her and Faye nodded her approval of the late morning break. The first thing she did was take off her apron and throw it dismissively on a chair. Then she walked briskly out and into the rest of her new small world of Clovelly, feeling defeated and thinking that her new choice of home had betrayed. Chapter 13 Fight Me. When she wasn't working at the bakery, she was struggling in a similar way with routine chores at her new home. The only difference was the size of and reason for the audience. At the bakery she faced her inexperience with everyday tasks and any mistakes she made the customers just wrote it off because she was a new employee, probably still in training, and usually got the order or the change due right eventually. At home, she was subject to Arthur's keen observance and sharp derision for sport. He loved to argue and Rachel would not be immune from his cutting remarks. He considered it to be a personality flaw that happened to make him perfectly suited to his professional calling. Okay, he said to her one day watching her trying to mop the kitchen floor. When you are done with struggling, just let me know and I'll take care of the task myself. The instant he uttered the words he knew he was wrong. He knew he had made a hurtful comment. He saw how what he said had broken her spirit. He did not know how to soften the after effects of his verbal blow. Whatever victory he had gained was not worth how awful he felt after he said it. Why did he feel the constant need to take his confusing feelings he had for her and transfer them back to her so negatively? What did he seek to prove? This was not law school, this was everyday life. This was not a courtroom, this was the kitchen. Almost instantly her posture slumped and she looked down, tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to be anywhere except there in that kitchen with him. As she was processing the sting of pain from his negative comment, she accidentally knocked the mop and the full bucket over and dirty, soapy water spilled everywhere. She could only imagine what cutting remark he would have for her after that. She left the kitchen as fast as she could, not waiting around to find out and initially slipping and sliding on the spill when she made her exit. She did not want to give him the satisfaction that he had made her cry. It was bad enough that he had made her run. Beatrice was in the other room listening to her grandson's ongoing, though slightly less negative attitude towards Rachel, but she wasn't quite sure if she should interfere now or wait until he was alone and give him a stern talking to. She waited to see how far he planned to go, or if he would stop his verbal attack of their house guest. She decided not to wait for the conversation to get more negative, and was about to rush in and give him hell when she saw a blur of Rachel running past her, defeated by her grandson and brought to tears by his brutal comments. You know, young man, you're not too old for me to put you across my knees and whip your bottom until you are crying out in pain for me to stop. She is just a girl trying to find her place in the world. She did not ask you for your perspective on how she cleaned the floor or ask you to do it better than she did. Can't you see, Arthur? You are doing nothing but making it harder on her. She has never been mean to you. No, ma'am. How dare you speak to anyone like that? Is that how your mother and father or I raised you? How dare you, young man? You make me ashamed to be your grandma. Now get out of here. I don't want to see your face for a while. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. You most definitely should be. And your next words of apology should be for Rachel. Rachel. He barely knew her. He thought he wanted to know her better. But his rudeness and cruel words were getting in the way. As he drove to the pub, his harsh comments repeated over and over again in his head, on a constant loop, making him more aware of how bad what he said really was. Why did he always manage to hurt this girl? He did not want to admit it, but he was slowly realizing that maybe she was getting under his skin. If someone as lovely as Rachel would even entertain giving him a second thought, he had successfully shut down all possibility of that ever happening with his signature meanness that marked every encounter he ever had with her. She was a beauty with her bronze-colored skin, almost black eyes and thick dark hair. But he could not consider an attraction to her, or anyone for that matter, until he passed the 2 bar exams in the States. It would not be fair. The way he treated Rachel was proof of that. From his first impression to his last and most recent in the kitchen, he was demonstrating a side of himself to her that no one should have to see. The necessary amount of time and devotion to preparing to pass clearly brought out the worst in him. He studied and studied, fearing that all of his effort might not be enough. He was no good to anyone at this point. He wished the whole thing was over. If only he had met her after he had passed both exams. It was no excuse, but his long hours of preparation, day after day, made him unsuitable company for almost anyone. Except, of course, his grandma, who knew how to handle him at his best and his worst. Once he was gone, Beatrice made her way up the stairs to Rachel's room and knocked. Are you okay, Rachel? She could hear her sobbing through the door. I think I need some alone time for a while. Thank you, but I just need to process all of the changes I've made so fast in the past couple of weeks. Is it all right to take my dinner up here in my room? I'll bring dinner up when it's done. Take good care of yourself tonight. Rachel curled up on her bed like a wounded kitten, and let her tears flow and her thoughts drift back to considering if there was a happily ever after for her in this quaint little fairy tale village at all. She might not have the answer to that, but one thing she knew was that she never wanted to speak with beastly Arthur again.